There are certain civilizations from the past that were of such great importance during their existence that they still have an influence on our lives today. One such civilization is the Magadhan Empire of ancient India, which played a central role in the early development of Buddhism and Indian culture as a whole. Magadha was located in the northeastern part of modern India and spanned roughly the same area as the modern state of Bihar. Magadha was bordered by the Ganges to the north, the Sun to the west, and the Bay of Bengal to the southeast. Many of the cities of the old empire exist even today. The original capital, Rajagriha, is a modern village of Rajgir, and the empire's later capital, Pataliputra, is now Patna, the modern capital of Bihar. The Magadhans ruled over this area for over 300 years, from approximately 684 BCE to 321 BCE. Even after the Magadha Empire ended, the area continued to be a major power in the region, as it was immediately followed by the Mauryan Empire, which Ashoka would later rule over. The empire was significant for several reasons. First, during the Buddha's lifetime, Magadha was one of the four major powers in India. Additionally, the empire was referred to in Buddhist texts as one of the 16 Mahajapatas, or Great Kingdoms. Finally, as mentioned above, the Magadha Empire served as a launching point for later empires, including the Mauryans. Because of these factors, it is important to get a better understanding of the Magadha Empire. To begin, we must analyze the government of the empire. The Magadhans had two emperors during the Buddha's time, Bimbisara and Ajatashatru. Ajatashatru was Bimbisara's son, and was slated to become emperor after his father's death. However, he got impatient, and according to the Buddhist texts on the subject, he murdered his father, or, according to the Jains, merely had him imprisoned. Either way, Bimbisara was removed from power, and Ajatashatru gained power. To better understand the Magadhan government, we must analyze the governmental structure in addition to its leaders. As noted, Magadha was ruled by a king or emperor. However, this ruler did not have absolute power. Rather, the government was structured in a manner similar to the constitutional monarchies of Europe from the recent past, combined with American-style federalism. Individual villages were each governed under their own assemblies, led by their chief, or gramakas. The gramakas of the 80,000 villages in the empire convened from time to time to form an empire-wide assembly. The villages were allowed to set their own procedures for deciding who should be on village assembly, and some of the villages used republican elections. Now that we have some background understanding of the Magadhan government, we can begin to examine the relationship between the empire and Buddhism. The kingdom had great significance for Buddhism, and Buddhism also had a significant effect on the empire. The Buddha himself was born outside of the Magadha Empire, in Lumbini, a land that would later be conquered by the Magadhas. Therefore, the empire shaped Buddha's life from a very young age. Conversely, Buddhism shaped the empire as well. Bimbisara's religious affiliation is not completely clear. Both the Jains and the Buddhists claim he followed their tradition. His queen was originally a Jain, but the Buddhists claim that she later converted to Buddhism and joined the Bhikshunis, or Buddhist nuns. Buddhism also played a major role in the life of the second Magadhan emperor during Buddha's lifetime, Ajatashatru. According to the text from the time, Buddha's evil cousin, Devadatta, performed a miracle which convinced Ajatashatru to follow him. In addition, Devadatta is said to be the one who convinced Ajatashatru to murder his father. Later, when he was attempting to conquer his northern neighbors, the Vriji, he sent his spies to follow the Buddha in hopes of gaining the insight as to where the Vriji got their strength. The spies overheard the Buddha saying that the Vriji's strength came from their unity and democratic form of government. Ajatashatru then attempted to break up this unity. Eventually, Ajatashatru was unable to find peace of mind because of his earlier misdeeds. At this point, he sought the Buddha to counsel him. Although the Buddha himself was born outside of Magadha, some of his most important disciples were natives of Magadha. Among these are Buddha's two chief disciples, Sariputra and Moggallana. These disciples were both born in Magadha on the same day and were childhood friends. Sariputra is famed for his intellectual prowess. He was called the General of the Dharma for his work in spreading Buddhism. Moggallana, the other chief disciple, is famed for his supernatural powers, and it is said that he could assume any form he wanted and was able to cause the ground to shake with his big toe. He was also able to leave his body and travel to different worlds, and often talked with the dead, helping them to understand their condition. Not only were a number of the Buddha's disciples born in Magadha, but many of them were also converted there. For example, both Sariputra and Moggallana converted there. Both had been followers of another religious leader, Sanjaya the Wanderer. However, they became disillusioned with his teachings. One day, Sariputra met a Buddhist monk named Asaji. After hearing the Buddha's teachings, Sariputra quickly convinced Moggallana to convert to Buddhism with him. Their abandonment of Sanjaya's teachings in favor of the Buddha's helped give Buddhism more legitimacy in the eyes of the Magadhan populace. Another important conversion was that of the three Jadala leaders and all of their followers, numbering in the thousands. The Jadalas were Brahmin fire worshippers, and the Buddha went to them and asked to sleep overnight in the room in which they kept their sacred fire. However, Kassapa, the Jadala's leader, informed the Buddha that there was also a serpent or dragon in the room which would likely kill him if he slept there. In spite of this, the Buddha insisted on being allowed to sleep in the room with the sacred fire. The dragon did come during the night, but it was unable to harm the Buddha. Eventually, it died because it was so angry about being unable to affect him. The next morning, the Buddha showed Kassapa the dead serpent and proclaimed, "His fire has been conquered by my fire." Despite this, Kassapa still believed that he was holier than the Buddha. Next, the Buddha proved that he could read Kassapa's mind, and convinced him to put aside his jealousies and become a Buddhist. Kassapa addressed his followers and told them about his decision to become a Buddhist. He told them they could do as they wished. They decided to follow their leader and converted en masse. Later, when Kassapa's brothers heard the story, they and their followers also converted. Not only did many of the Buddha's disciples have roots in Magadha, but a number of the Buddhist rules we are familiar with also have their origin from events that occurred in Magadha. It was in the Magadhan capital, Rajagriha, where the Buddha first issued the Vinaya Pitaka, or rules for life in the Sangha, or monastery. Also, legend has it that the rule of bhikshus and bhikshunis accepting only what was offered to them came after Ajatasattu became upset because he believed that Buddhist monks had used timber that had been reserved for his use. After this, according to the legend, Buddha issued a rule commanding the monks to take nothing that was not offered to them. This relationship worked both ways, as Buddhism also had an effect on the laws of the empire. Earlier in his life, the Buddha had been an ascetic. During this period, he was once denied passage across a river because, as an ascetic, he was unable to pay. Later, after the Buddha was older, Bimbisara heard this story, and he amended the law to allow free passage across rivers for all who were unable to pay. There are many other reasons the Magadha Empire holds such great significance for Buddhism. First, it was a Magadhan city, Urava, that the Buddha chose as the ideal place for him to attain enlightenment. He traveled there, entered meditation, and eventually, in this city, he attained nirvana and became a Buddha. After he attained enlightenment, it was pointed out to the Buddha that his primary goal should be the reformation of the religions of Magadha, which had all become corrupt. Later, after the Buddha's death, his relics were scattered throughout the Magadhan Empire. They were divided up among all of the tribes of the empire. One share of the relics went to Ajatasattu. He had them enshrined in stupas and instituted their worship on a large scale. Later still, the first council of Buddhism was held in the Magadhan capital of Rajagriha. At this council, attended by over 500 Buddhas, all of the baskets of the Buddha's teaching were recited by his attendant, Ananda. In conclusion, Magadha was a great empire in ancient India, which played a role analogous to that the Roman and Greek empires played for Europe. Not only was it a great power in its own right, but it served as a center of power for later empires as well. On top of this, it is of central importance to one of the world's great religious traditions, Buddhism. Magadha was the homeland of many of the earliest Buddhists, and it was in Magadha that the Buddha finally attained enlightenment and began converting followers.